September 23, 2017, Revelation 12 sign. Even though it's 11:21 at night on what is this, Saturday night? I believe it is Saturday night, August 5th. Even though it's rather late at night, even though it's a weekend, we are running out of days between now and September 23rd. It's just over 1 month away. And most of you know I have written a book. The book is completed about the September 23rd, 2017 Revelation sign. And we're going to go through that book today. And we're going to take a specific look at that book today. And we're going to go through the specific ideas and the specific facts of this book so you can have an idea of what is going on. You can have an idea of what is taking place. And you can know how you want to react to this situation. So let's take a look at the book, Revelation 12 sign, by yours truly. And feel free to ask questions. I'll take them take them at the end. And the first thing that we have to ask, and many people are saying that September 23rd, 2017 is going to change the world forever. You've got this prophecy in Revelation. A great sign appears in heaven, woman clothed with the sun, moon under her feet, on her head crown of 12 stars, pregnant, crying out birth pains, agony of giving birth. Now the question becomes, is this a future prophecy, or is this a prophecy that has been already fulfilled within the biblical timeline? And like I just said, September 23rd, a few weeks away, holds the rapt attention, number one, of a group of fundamentalist Christians eagerly looking forward to an event that they think will be and will culminate in the second coming of Christ. And I am very happy to say that I talked with both of my daughters who are still involved heavily in the Christian church, and neither one of them had heard of this. So I feel very good about that. I take heart in that. I feel very happy about that because perhaps it's not as widespread as those of us that spend time on YouTube would believe, because we would think it's the biggest thing going. It's one of the biggest subjects on YouTube as of this moment. But fortunately, within real rank-and-file Christianity, perhaps not quite the big doings that we find here in the YouTube community. But the gist of it is that on this date, September 23rd, 2017, just over a month from now, the constellation of Virgo, which is the Virgin, that the sun will be in Virgo. Earth's moon will be positioned near Virgo's feet. Additionally, Jupiter will also be in Virgo, while the planets Venus, Mars, and Mercury will be above and to the right of Virgo in the constellation of Leo, which in the view of these people, along with Virgo's 9 resident stars, make up the 12 stars referenced in the passage. They see the woman as Virgo. They see the sky as heaven, along with the sun, moon, and at her feet, and the 12 stars / planets crowning her. Okay. And adding intrigue, they say, is that the Revelation 12 sign coincides with the high holy days of Judaism, and that's long been a favorite of date-setting eschatologists. And just so we know, we don't want to go past a word that we don't understand, because that will inhibit our understanding of anything else that we read for up to 70%. Now that's a very important key. Let me just make sure that you understand that. No matter what you're reading, if you're reading a comic book, encyclopedia, whatever you're reading, if you get to a word that you don't understand, stop immediately, look it up. Because if you go past that word, you will reduce your ability to comprehend any other information you read past the words that you did not understand by, again, up to some 70%. So eschatology is the Christian study of what Christians call the end times or the last days. The Feast of Trumpets is the first of the fall feasts. It's going to be around September 21, 22 this year. Rosh Hashanah is the Jewish New Year celebration. Feast of Trumpets in Jewish tradition is seen by some as a day when the dead will be resurrected, Day of Judgment, and many fundamentalist Christians link it to the tribulation period that they see pictured in the book of Revelation. So basically, to encapsulate the folks that are advocates of the Revelation 12 sign, the Revelation 12 sign groups, is that the September 2017 alignment is the great sign described in the passage that we're talking about, Revelation, that the woman represents the nation of Israel, who they think is going to go into tribulation. The male child represents the church. The church is going to be raptured before the tribulation begins, unless you're a mid-tribulation believer. Then it's going to happen in the middle of the tribulation, or unless you're a post-tribulation believer when the rapture happens at the end of the tribulation. So it's either pre, mid, or post-tribulation as far as rapture advocates. They do disagree on the timing of the rapture, and to be frank, pre-trib rapture is probably 95% of the people's beliefs. And even if they disagree on the timing of the rapture, they all believe that to be included in the rapture, you must accept Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, and as the only means of being reconciled to God. And then they point to Isaiah 66, saying the birth of the man-child occurs before the woman travails in labor and pain, which is proof, obviously, that the rapture is the marvel spoken of by Isaiah, the man-child representing the church that will be born before the tribulation period. Now, of course, you know about me, Bible college graduate, Protestant minister, 20 years, largest denominations, over 100,000 hours of study, biblical texts, associate's degree, anthropology, cultural, physical, geography, former minister. And my job in this book is to present what I hope is an objective study so that you can share you can crunch the data and come up with what you feel is the truth. And I will endeavor to do that as well in this shows that we're doing about this. And I'll try not to be as opinionated as I normally am. Here's the table of contents. So we're going to try to do a little bit of Jeff Light. We're going to try to be objective. And we're going to try to give you just the facts, ma'am, and allow you to make your own decisions as to what to believe. So let's go ahead and jump right into this. I doubt we'll do this all in one sitting because it is pretty lengthy. But this is an ebook. It is available right now by clicking on the box below where it says Jeff's Books. And it is available right now, even as we speak. Lots of people have bought it. I really appreciate that. So let's look first of all at a history of failures. And I put this in here because no book about identifying a date that's supposed to show a great event would be complete or would be honest, to be frank with you, without a brief explanation of previous attempts to set dates. Now, many of you may have heard of the Great Disappointment. That chart there is representative of the theology of the Great Disappointment. And this happened between 1831 and 1844. Fellow led by William Miller, Baptist preacher. He preached that Christ was going to return in sometime between March 21st, 1843 and March 21st, 1844. Now, if you notice there, he did not set a particular date. He said sometime this year between March 21st of 1843, March 21st of 1844. And this was really the first great eschatological prediction, at least in our modern era. And it did receive very widespread media attention. And, of course, 1844 passed without Christ coming back. And that's why it was called the Great Disappointment. So, number one, William Miller, 1844, didn't happen, Great Disappointment. And then the Watchtower Society, which we now know today as the Jehovah's Witnesses. And it's interesting to me that even though Miller's group obviously failed, his predictions failed, it spawned two great big, huge churches, Seventh-day Adventists and what we now know as the Jehovah's Witnesses. They started out, I think they were called the Bible Students, Watchtower, Bible and Tract Society, Jehovah's Witnesses. And the Seventh-day Adventists have been smart. They learned their lesson. They have not set a date. However, the Jehovah's Witnesses, despite their protest to the opposite, and if you just Google Jehovah's Witnesses 1914, Jehovah's Witnesses 1975 or 74 or 5, there's a little bit of disagreement on that. You can see the actual pages from the Watchtower magazine that predicted 1914 would be the time that Christ came. And then when that one missed, 1974 or 1975 would be the time where Christ came. So even though they doth protest too much, they certainly did predict those dates. And of course, those dates did not come to pass. So you've got the Great Disappointment. You've got the Watchtower disappointment. And you think people would begin to learn their lesson, but not so. This one is the first one that I remember really being a part of. I 75, 74, wasn't really dialed in yet, 9, 10 years old, born in 81. So what, that made me 6? Yeah, 8, 9, 10 years old. The first one I really remember is when I was a minister by then. I got one of these books in the mail. 88 Reasons Why the Rapture Will Be in 1988. And I try to make a little joke, you know, obviously biblical prophecy must be more difficult than rocket science, because Edgar C. Whisenant, who was a NASA engineer, predicted the rapture would occur sometime between September 11th and September 13th in the year 1988. Problem was, it didn't happen. But you can't blame him for lack of trying. He mailed out 300,000 copies free of charge to this book to ministers across America. And you think, wow, that costs a lot of money, but it ended up being a brilliant marketing strategy because he had sales in excess of 4.5 million copies in bookstores. And even if he made $1 off each one, that's pretty doggone good. If he made a dime off each one, that's pretty doggone good. And like I said, I was one of the ministers that received that book. And I remember sitting there and reading it. I believe I was in Bible college, or I was just starting in the ministry because I was working a job, I think, to help support us. And I think I was working as a security guard at night. And I think I was reading this booklet at night when I was doing my security guarding. And I remember it being very, very well written, very compelling. And I remember kind of wanting to be swayed, but yet I wasn't swayed. And we'll talk about that want to be swayed. We'll talk about that desire for the sensational and the fantastical and the new and the different. But I didn't get swayed. But this was so believable that the Trinity Broadcasting Network was preempting regular programming to give instructions on how to be ready for the rapture. So obviously, even though he gave 88 reasons why the rapture would be in 1988, there was at least 89 reasons why it wouldn't be in 1988, and it came and passed, and obviously did not happen. Down in 2011, and I mean, these aren't stupid people. William Miller was a minister, brilliant guy from all accounts. You know, the people that run the Watchtower aren't stupid. NASA engineer, and here we have a civil engineer. Lots of math, smart guys. Harold Camping, and this guy obviously was pretty brilliant. 150 markets for his radio station group. And he decided to set a date. Rapture, May 21st, 2011. Again, associated with, you know, that was the rapture. And then the second coming would be associated with the feast days, October 21st. And Camping turned out to be just as poor a prophet as his predecessors. And you'll remember this one. This was very recent. I remember being on Coast to Coast and being asked about it, and thankfully saying, please. And it was the tetrad blood moon craze of 2015. The Lord's perfect sign. You know, there's 4 moons, and they're blood moons, and they're at the Feast of Tabernacles, they're at the Feast of Trumpets, and OMG for sure. Jesus is coming back. Tribulation, it's all going to happen. And guess what? It didn't happen. So here we are, a couple years later, and we got another group of people predicting a great event, rapture, second coming, tribulation, et al. So the question that rational people would be asking is, in the midst of all this date-setting fervor, has there been a constant, stable historical position held by the majority of church scholars? Very fair question, I think. And the answer is yes. And a lot of people don't understand the role of the Protestant Reformation in biblical end-time belief. And as hard as it is to believe now with Left Behind and all this stuff, the end-time scenario really wasn't talked about much for the first 1,500 years of church history, because I think folks might have just been too busy trying to live good lives. Imagine that. But that all changed with the Protestant Reformation. And of course, here's Martin Luther nailing his 95 Theses to the door of the Wittenberg Chapel. And I've stood in front of this door, and that one looks remarkably like this door. I've actually stood there myself. And I was very disappointed to know that this is very accurate. The door of the church was kind of like a bulletin board. That's where everybody posted, you know, dog lost, bicycle for sale, being silly. But any little notes that they wanted to post and advertisements were posted there. So it wasn't as dramatic as we think it was, him going up and nailing his theses to the door. Well, everybody did that, but Martin Luther's obviously ended up being a little more important than the lost sheep or the lost cow or eggs for sale. But he did that in 1517. But most people don't realize that the Reformation lasted until the mid-1600s. And one of the great themes of the Protestant Reformation, in addition to justification by faith, in addition to opposition to, indulgences, which an indulgence, there's another one of those words, an indulgence was something that Catholics could buy, and you could actually buy your friends out of purgatory or your family members out of purgatory. If someone that you loved was in purgatory, you could pay some money to get them out of purgatory, or at least shorten their stay in torment. And Luther correctly came out against those. But one of the great themes of the Protestant Reformation was end-time prophecy. And in fact, it was the Protestant Reformation that led to the beginning of eschatology as we know it today. And here's why. Because the institution of the papacy, or the Pope, was a main target of the Protestant Reformation. And what really the main idea of the Protestant Reformation, arguably even above justification by faith, arguably even above selling of indulgences, is they identified the Pope as Antichrist. Because he was doing those things and authorizing those things, because he lifted himself up above God. And they're saying that the Pope was the Antichrist. Huge part of the Protestant Reformation, probably the main message, to be frank with you. And I cited some references here from the Smalcald Articles of 1537. In calling the Pope Antichrist, early Lutherans stood in a tradition that reached back into the 11th century. So, at least till the 11th century, actually probably before that, dissidents, heretics, and saints had called the Bishop of Rome the Antichrist. The Pope is the very Antichrist, they said. The Pope is the Antichrist. 1537 treatise on the power and primacy of the Pope. All the marks and vices of Antichrist plainly agree with the kingdom of the Pope and its adherents. That's the Westminster Confession. The Pope of Rome is the Antichrist, the son of man of sin, the son of perdition. So just as surely as the Protestant Reformation preached justification by faith, the banning of indulgences, they preached that the Pope was the Antichrist. So to answer our question, the historical position for 15th century was mostly quiet contemplation, and the Reformation blew that up, lit a fire. Pope is the Antichrist, eschatology, front and center. And of course, if you're a Catholic, you can't have these crazy Protestants running around saying that the Pope is the Antichrist and have them not be challenged. That just wouldn't do. And it didn't happen because in 1545, Ignatius of Loyola dressed in his, holy soldier outfit here. I'm trying to be objective, I'm sorry. Loyola started the Society of Jesus, which is called the Jesuits. And their main vows were obedience to the Pope, who, by the way, personally authorized the creation of the Jesuits. And Loyola had that military background. In fact, he was recuperating from injuries suffered in the Battle of Pamplona when he received his calling into the ministry. But the Jesuits were designed for someone who wanted to be a soldier of God, for someone who wanted to defend the propagation of the Catholic faith, and they're called God soldiers, God Marines, or the company, for a reason. And the main thing that the Reformation did, the Jesuits did, was participate in what was called the Counter-Reformation. Obviously, the Protestant Reformation was going, and the Catholic Church launched the Counter-Reformation, and the Jesuits were the foot soldiers of the Catholic Church in the Counter-Reformation with full military fervor and conviction. God's Marines leading the Counter-Reformation. And here's our old friend, Father Francisco Ribera. We've talked about him on some other videos. Ribera was a Spaniard, just like Loyola. He was a loyal Jesuit soldier. And interestingly enough, he was the confessor of Saint Teresa of Avila. Teresa was a prominent Catholic mystic. More about that later. She was a prolific writer in the Counter-Reformation movement. And she was a known advocate and experiencer of religious ecstasy, altered states, speaking in tongues, seeing visions, dreams. She was ahead of her time, and it's my conviction, and there is some objective historical writings, that Teresa did engage in glossolalia, or speaking in tongues. And I'm not the only one that believes that, far from it. And the fact that Ribera was associated with her, I didn't know until I started studying for this book a week ago. And that is a tremendously vital piece of information in understanding this whole September 23rd, Revelation 12 sign. So Ribera's association with this remarkable nun uniquely qualified him and equipped him for the great work he was selected to perform for God's soldiers, defense of the Pope, and the Counter-Revelation. So in 1585, Ribera launched what I believe was the greatest counterintelligence operation in history. The greatest act of espionage from within that I believe has ever been accomplished. It was the greatest result of daring do. It was just incredible what he did. Objectively, I'm like in awe of this dude, because man, he really did something that was impossible, audacious, ludicrous, and he did it. And he did it big time, maybe bigger than he had expected to do it. He wrote a book called Sacrum Beati Ioannis Apostoli and Evangeliste Apocalypsis Commentaries, which means the sacred writings of John the Apostle and commentary on the Apocalypse, which is the book of Revelation. And the Pope, through Loyola, gave Ribera a simple task. Easy peasy. In order to remove the papacy from consideration as the Antichrist, which was the main message of the Reformation, you got to turn that whole thing around. Huh, are you kidding me? So the Reformation's teaching Pope is the Antichrist. Ribera told, Convince them that's not true. Convince them that the sky's not blue. Convince them that the sun doesn't come up in the morning. Convince them that the Pope is not the Antichrist. Go against 1,600 years of teaching, Father Ribera, and convince them. So Ribera writes this 500-page book. And his assertions in this book, which were absolutely, positively, totally, and completely new, never heard of before. Late 1500s, 16th century, almost the 17th century. 50 years, drop in a bucket before the King James Version. So here's what Ribera's beliefs and teachings were, invented whole cloth in the late 16th century, let's say the 17th century, because what's a few years between friends? And here's where his teachings, right here. The book of Revelation is yet future. The Antichrist is not the Pope. He's a single individual. That will appear in the future. The book of Revelation's future. Daniel's 70th week is future. The Antichrist is not the Pope. The Antichrist is a single boogeyman, if you will, that will arise in the future and will persecute and blaspheme the saints of God. Now, I'm not saying there hasn't been persecution against people that believe the message of the Christ, but Ribera was teaching there'd be a specific time at the end with this rapture, this tribulation, we'll get to it. Ribera taught that they'd rebuild the temple in Jerusalem. Ribera taught that Jesus Christ would be denied, Rome would be destroyed, that the Antichrist would be received by the Jews, that the Antichrist would pretend to be God, that he would kill the two witnesses, and he would conquer the world. All in the future. Never been told before. Brand new news. Hurry, hurry, step right up, read all about it. Ribera says Revelation is the future. Get your paper right here. Ribera says Daniel's 70th week, future. Ribera says tribulation to come in the future. It was that kind of a thing. And Ribera took the 1260 days prophecy of Daniel, which had always been understood from the year-day theory. A year with the Lord is as 1,000 days. 1,000 days is as a year. But Ribera said, no, it's really 1,260 days that happen at the end of time. So his task was to wipe away 1,600 years of collective memory of the church and silence the main argument of the voices of the Reformation. What nerve, what avarice, what daring do? How could one Jesuit priest write one book and change the historical position of the church and overcome the loudest voices of the Protestant Reformation? Luther, Wycliffe, Knox, on and on. Ridiculous, right? Who would have thought that as we sit here at 11:49 p.m. on the East Coast of the United States on August 5th, who would have thought that the doctrines of Francisco Ribera still are preached ahead of the doctrines of Martin Luther? Who would have thought that the doctrines of Francisco Ribera are still preached and believed ahead of the doctrines of John Calvin, John Knox, Tyndale, Wycliffe? Ribera's great work introduced the world to the teaching of futurism. The proposal that the book of Revelation is not about the Middle Ages, that the book of Revelation is not about the papacy, that the Pope was not the Antichrist. His book, at the height of the Revelation, flew in the face of the height of the, the Protestant Reformation, flew in the face of the Reformation. Ribera taught that the Pope wasn't the Antichrist. The Pope, Romanism wasn't the seat of the Antichrist. Revelation was not a historical rendering of the rise of Rome as the beast. It was now to be understood the book of Revelation was about the future. Daniel's 70th week was the future. Pope can't possibly be the Antichrist because we don't know who the Antichrist is yet. It's in the future. Oops, I'm trying to be objective. I'm sorry. Tribulation period was not a record of Roman persecution at the hands of the Pope as Antichrist, but a future period by some faceless single individual Ribera called the Antichrist. And all one has to do, as I just said, is survey the beliefs of modern eschatology to see how successful Ribera was. Today, the time-honored historicist position, all but dead. Futurism rules the day. Christian eschatology interprets the book of Revelation, book of Daniel as future events. Antichrist, future world-conquering boogeyman. During the Middle Ages, up to the Protestant Reformation, there was no futurist interpretation. All these beliefs of Ribera were non-existent. Today, the historicist interpretation is non-existent. And Ribera Jesuit eschatological futurism stands almost unopposed. Amazing. Amazing. The futurist assigns all of prophecy to the future. Rapture. And just for those of you who don't know, the rapture is what Christians will be supernaturally snatched up as a group to meet Jesus in the air. Tribulation period follows the rapture, either 3.5 or 7 years, depending on what you believe, when the Antichrist wears out the saints of God. And some think it's mid, some think it's post. And amazingly, Jesuit soldier of Jesus, Father Francisco Ribera, has done the impossible. He has accomplished the preposterous. He's completed the patently absurd. He wrote a book that not only defeated, listen to this, not only defeated the Protestant reformers, but transformed the reformer spiritual descendants, the Protestants, into soldiers in Ribera's army, preaching Ribera's doctrine, protecting the Roman Church and her Pope. In reality, he recruited a whole new army of volunteer Protestant Jesuits. Somewhere, my friends, Father Francisco Ribera is smiling, but that's none of my business. We're a half hour in. I may go a little bit longer, but let's take a look in the chat room and see what we have here. Wow, lots of folks on a Saturday night. Glad to see you. So let's take a look in the chat room. 3 days after my birthday, I'm guessing that Art his birthday's on September 20th. Hello, Art. Hello, Jen. Hello, Chris. Hola. ¿Cómo está? Muy bien. Will I attain special powers since I'm a Virgo? Well, Art, you'll get those in the eclipse that's coming up on the 21st, which is it's in Aquarius, not Virgo. I'm sorry. Hello, Jolie. Stormy Jackson. How can it be low again? How can the volume possibly be low again? Ah, that's why. That's probably going to help it. Anyway, sorry about that. Top of the morning to y'all, William Murray, over in Scotland. Y'all are serious. I'm usually asleep. I'll hang out for a bit. Matt Bryant, good to see you. Anyone got more of that Hey, anybody got more of that? Anybody got some eschatology? Just need a little eschatology. Anybody got some? Oh, I'm just trying to be objective. I'm sorry. Forget y'all Pacific timers. It's all good. Talk about dedication. Oh, well, good morning. I'd watch, but it keeps getting hung up. I bet the heat is bad, humid. Why do people take the Bible literally? No wonder they're called Jehovah's Witnesses. They're as full of lies as their God. I like that, Jolie. Night Stormy Christian organization remembers they're it. This game would be over. Yep. Jewish friend says the Bible's the greatest story ever written. I agree. Jehovah's Witness wrote a great book. Former Jehovah's Witness is The Age of I Know, Unmasking the Magicians. Thanks, Chris. Heat wave in Europe. Used to be a Christian, never had a religion. Don't believe in following someone. That's Matt Bryant. I've noticed bubble clouds. Jen Fisher. Really weird weather. That is interesting. Stormy Jackson, 44, was raised a Jehovah's Witness. I think the Lucifer heat wave is a psyop. They still take money for purgatory. I found my dad's life, and that's where my dad's life insurance went. Interesting. Didn't know that, Sheena. My dad was a Knights Templar. You're saying the gods of purgatory need money. You know, it's tough in heaven, man. They got it. You don't want God to have to look between the cushions of the heavenly couch. It's the first rule of hermeneutics. Oh boy, I remember studying that in my Bible college. To take the Bible literally first and foremost, unless parts are metaphors. Actually, that's not the first rule of hermeneutics, but many people believe that way. And they don't do it though. They don't take the Bible literally. They take it almost always as figuratively. You should get Vera Kutne on the show. Yeah, send her an email for me, and I'll do it myself too. Let me write down her name. Vera Cortenay, VERACORTENAY, Vera Cortenay. Sure did, complete with Air Force jackets, Masonic woman. Oh wow. Left mom and me penniless. J.W. Body always told us not to study the Bible without our propaganda books. Exactly. I think that it was said by maybe Judge Rutherford or the guy that came after Judge Rutherford. He said that their studies show that if you stop studying in the Watchtower books or try to do regular study in the Watchtower books plus, within 3 years you're falling back into darkness. And I went to a Jehovah's Witness service one time because I had a buddy that was one, and they create this incredible era, this incredible erroneous era of learning. You know, people stand up, they ask a question, and then they hand the microphone to somebody, and someone gives the answer. I thought, wow, all these people are really well read. And I looked over my buddy, and he's got a Watchtower. The questions and answers are in the Watchtower, so they're just parroting. And they create this deceptive atmosphere of, oh boy, these people are learning. They're smart. We're asking questions. Our whole service is question and answer. How great that. Well, no, the question's written in the book. Somebody reads the question. The answer's written in the book. Somebody reads the answer out of the book. Blew my mind. Blew my mind. Ribera was unbelievably twisted and evil. His doctrine was, at least certainly. Anyone else picture Father Ribera sneakily tiptoeing while humming Mission Impossible? Yeah. Yep. Rainbow Girls. Yep. I remember going to Rainbow Girls dances. Futurism with the Bible got me for a long time. I'm glad I'm free of it now. You need people to tell you, to have a story to tell. It's yesterday and tomorrow. Mind the church, mind the government. Hey Jeff, futurism, that sounds awful modern. I think they call it transhumanism now. I'm just talking strictly about eschatology and in Bible terms. Futurism is the name of it. Being terrified about the rapture happening and being left behind. Yep. My parents stopped by after church while I was watching one of Jeff's videos. Had to quickly pause it because I didn't want to go there with them. Let that thing run, Jen. Oh, I know what you're saying. I know what you're saying. I lost my place. I lost my place. There we go. I respect what my mom wanted. Yeah, I understand that. Moved away from home. I'm just looking for some questions here. A lot of great commentary. I like just videos about respecting others' free will and imposing your will on anyone is true blasphemy of the Spirit. I agree with that. Michael Sarian, I'd like to get him on. J Dubs permanently telling that the earth is flat after they handed me a Watchtower magazine with a globe earth on it. I've never heard that they teach flat earth. Seventh-day Adventists are all about reevaluation. Well, I think you meant revelation, but yeah, I agree with you 100%. So I'm torn if I should do a little bit more of this or if we should just let it go at this point. Let's do just a little bit more. Let's see what we got here. We got the Christ and the historical church, answer the Jesuit eschatologists. Let's do this a little bit about the rapture, and then we'll wrap it up for tonight. Now, the modern eschatologists do pay their homage to the Jewish heritage by the universal teaching of the rapture. You understand the rapture is a thoroughly Jewish teaching. That's where Jesuit teaching, Jesuit. That's who invented it. That's who propagated it, Jesuits. It's a Jesuit teaching. And it flies in the face of the traditional teaching of the church and of the Protestant Reformation. Arguably, the most popular teaching in Christian eschatology is the rapture. And again, the rapture is, that's the left behind, could come in any moment. Planes crashing, cars crashing because Christians are suddenly taken. And remember, straight from a Jesuit. And this is interesting. I don't know if we've talked about this on the air before or not, but the more recent heritage of the rapture, and this is Saint Teresa, I think it's Teresa, not Teresa, but, either way. The recent heritage of the rapture is traced to the British Isles and the churches of John Nelson Darby in the 1840s. And what happened there was this lady named Margaret MacDonald started giving messages in tongues and interpretation in tongues, and she was prophesying this pre-tribulation rapture. And this is where the genius of Saint Teresa comes in. Let me tell you what tongues and interpretations mean. She stands up in the middle of the church service, and she starts speaking in a language she doesn't know, Honda, Honda, Hyundai, Hyundai, Sima, Toyota, something like that. And that's a quintessential Pentecostal thing, speaking in tongues, glossolalia, in anthropological terms. And then somebody else stands up and interprets it. That's the way it's supposed to happen. 90% of the time it doesn't. The person speaking out the tongues waits for a few minutes and then translates into the language of the congregation, which in this case in Scotland would have been English. So she speaks in angelic tongues, that's what they think. She interprets it. And that's exactly the stuff that Saint Teresa would do. And that's exactly the stuff that Father Ribera witnessed her doing when he was her confessor. Does anybody else think that's a little too coincidental? Here's a lady that was all into the speaking in tongues and the glossolalia and the prophecy. And the reintroduction into modern times and the movement of the rapture into warp drive came from what? Speaking in tongues and glossolalia. And it makes me wonder if Ribera didn't have some spiritual help. Could it be, and I'm asking this, could it be that there's unseen spiritual forces that Saint Teresa was in contact with and used that were leveraged to influence Ms. MacDonald to give her prophecies, and that might still be influencing eschatological enthusiasts to this very day? Is there a supernatural component to this rapture teaching? And then something else happened which seems almost beyond possibility of belief of coincidence. C.I. Scofield, who is the author, of course, of the Scofield Reference Bible, he was either at the MacDonald meetings or he heard about them. I think he was there. You can't prove he was there. It's tough, but a lot of scholars believe that C.I. Scofield actually heard the Mary MacDonald prophecies, or Margaret. Was her name Mary or Margaret? I always mix that up. Margaret. Some people believe Scofield heard the Margaret MacDonald prophecies. Anyway, they wound up in his reference Bible. And this reference Bible became the default textbook. And he also wrote this correspondence course. And it was this Bible, the Scofield Reference Bible, and those correspondence courses that Scofield wrote that became the curricula for all the early American Protestant Bible institutes. So you got Ribera's doctrine coming out in the 17th century, getting supercharged late 19th, early 20th century by the same type of spiritual activity that Teresa was involved in, Saint Teresa. And it just happened that a American Bible scholar who was going to produce the Bible that would become the de facto textbook for all the American Bible institutes just happened to be there and happened to put it in his Bible. I wasn't born at night. I was born in the afternoon, but it wasn't yesterday afternoon. And I'm able to put A and B together when they don't equal C and say something is strange. Far too many coincidences. I believe there is a spiritual, I believe there could be, I'm trying to be objective, I believe there could be a spiritual component to the success of Ribera and the Jesuits. In Schofield, looks kind of like, I don't know, he's got a little bit of a, anyway. One of the fathers of modern American populist Protestantism was an enthusiastic foot soldier in the advancement of Jesuit doctrine, invented to defeat the original Reformation. Again, it blows my mind. Saint Teresa, involved at the beginning of Ribera's work. Jesuit Brain Trust, Loyola, Ribera, Teresa. Supernatural spiritual assistance. Seems very likely to me. I think it's staggering. I think it's stunning. It literally blows my mind to think of the implications. And it blows me away. It really blows me away to think about all this. Let me take a last pass through the chat room and we'll put this baby to bed for the night. Bible's simply a transliteration. They do subtract a bunch of books and add books. I've seen one of those Bibles. Yeah, it was the standard Bible. Music heals me. Don't get me started on the whole speaking in tongues dealio. I was raised Pentecostal. I can still speak in tongues anytime I feel like it. You mean like this? Shandala makandala babasita lama koya. Oh boy. Spain and Portugal were the Queen's slave trade. Glossolalia does happen outside of religious dogma. It's a anthropological occurrence. Have you seen the Maranatha video pop up alongside your videos? That Maranatha video says on the title, "Beware of Jeffrey Darty, the Christian Whistleblower." Really? Oh, that's called, yeah, that's why they put my name in there so it will pop up. Maranatha video. I'm going to have to check them out. I don't even know who that is. Maranatha video. Well, you know what? That excites me because that means we're making an impact. Revelation was written by the Gnostic Corinthians. It has the book of alchemy and Kabbalah. What about the sky opening up like a scroll? Dung. Catholics don't talk about the rapture. Not many of them. Did you get my link to Columbia University? King James was not a black man. It's a hoax. Forget about it. It's foolish. Jesus was the Spanish Inquisition all about? That's a good question, Jen. We'll get into that. Weird weather. Seventh-day Adventists are all about Revelation. I think that's it. I think we've gone through the whole chat room. I think you need a lioness behind you, not a lion. Well, that's possible. That's possible. I like the lion. I understand every sound he just made. Can someone give an interpretation of what I said? Why is the government listing Christians as a threat to national security? I don't think they're listing Christians. They're listing Christian identity groups. And that's the people that think that in sovereignty, American sovereignty, and we need to be obeying the Bible instead of the government. But most Christians will teach you, according to Paul's writings, that you submit yourself to the government. Translating for you now. Unindoctrinate yourself. Unread, bastardize yourself. Awesome. I just happen to have a little something right here that says, what do we need to do? Let me go into this so I can see it. What we need to do is de-rat bastardize. Be de-rat bastardized. Be de-rat bastardized. Be de-rat bastardized. De-rat bastardized. That's what we need to do. My friend Robin in Hawaii sent me those, so got a chance to use it. It was pretty fun. Digging on deception. Yalda Bayoff can never win. Down with the rat bastard. Abso-damn-lutely. Well, folks, that's part one. Next time we're going to get into, what will we get into next? We'll get into actually looking at the rapture itself, the doctrine of it, looking at some of the absurdities of the rapture doctrine, which shows us that it can't possibly be true. So be excellent to each other. I missed the D in the translation. Oh, well, that was pretty good, Chris. You did a great job. So you're hired as the translator. Yeah, we do need that written on a banner when we march with torches. Absolutely. Well, folks, I appreciate your attention. I appreciate you being here. The book is available. We'll continue to do some more shows and get the... I hope that wasn't cut off the whole time like that. That must have been really upsetting to people. But anyway, sorry about that. We're learning how to do this better. I'm getting better. Slowly but surely, I'll get there, I promise you. But I'm Jeffrey Daugherty, the Christian Whistleblower. We appreciate your attention. And is there one last quick question? I know, I'm working on that, Chris. All right, folks, I appreciate your attention. Y'all get some sleep. I might get some at some point tonight. Unindoctrinate yourself, unwind your mind, and be excellent to each other. Be excellent to each other. I'm Jeffrey Daugherty, the Christian Whistleblower, and we'll see you next time.